who helps student athletes with mental health issues and mental aspects of athletic performance. She's here at Ohio State with us, but before that she worked for various athletic teams at the University of Notre Dame, Washington State University, and Kenyon College. She specializes in eating disorders among athletes and has experiences with various mental health issues related to depression, substance abuse, and relationship problems. She herself is a former athlete, collegiate swimmer, volleyball player, who won the 1994 Honda Award for D3 Athlete of the Year. And she continues to keep up her athletics with competitive swimming and triathlons and relays. And appropriately enough, next to her is another swimmer. This is Madeline Kraft, who's a 2016 graduate of Wittenberg University, where she earned a degree in business management and violin performance. She was a 4-year letter winner for the Wittenberg swim team, specializing in the breaststroke and individual medleys. As a freshman, she actually earned Wittenberg Tigers Award for her outstanding contributions to the team, and as a junior and senior, she was the fastest 200 breaststroker. She's also, right now she's working for, doing event planning for Wind Point Partners in Chicago, but she too is continuing to be an athlete. She's going to be doing some open swims this summer and is training for a half marathon. My God, people make me feel terrible about myself, but all right. Next to her, a former football player for the University of Louisville, Derek Cowherd, we are thrilled, joined us last year as Executive Director of SASSO, which is our athletic, he's Associate Athletic Director for Ohio State's Student Athlete Support Services Office. He also, he came from the University of Mississippi, where he was a Senior Associate Athletic Director for Student Athlete Development. And certainly not least, but on the end there, we have Jerry Snodgrass, who's the Executive Director of the Ohio High School Athletic Association. And he has served as administrator for various sports, including soccer, basketball, baseball, softball, lacrosse, and hockey. He was inducted into the Ohio Interscholastic Athletic Administrator Association's Hall of Fame in October of 2010, the same year that he earned the Naismith Meritorious Service Award. He's also earned OHSAA's Ethics and Integrity Award. So welcome to all of you. Give me a round of applause to welcome them. Jennifer, I'd like to start with you if I could, because it feels like there's a lot to unpack about student athletes who make the decision, be it their own decision or a decision is forced upon them, to end their athletic pursuits, no matter what stage that may be. Can you talk a little bit about some of the biggest issues that you see related to that transition?
Sure. So it is a big decision, and sometimes just making that decision is the toughest part of it. And there are predictable emotions that athletes experience upon retirement, and some of those emotions mimic a grief response. It can be quite a big loss in their lives. So sadness, feelings of loss. There may be anger at circumstances surrounding the end of their career, especially if it's not their choice. Sometimes there is a lot of worry about the future. I know we used to have a career networking night for all of the student athletes where they would meet different employers and kind of get those networking skills down. And I used to attend as a psychologist, if anyone wanted to be stupid enough to become a psychologist. And it was interesting to me because these student athletes are so confident and polished in their sport, but to put them in a different circumstance where they're networking, talking to employers they don't know, many of them were terrified. And so that uncertainty about the future of going into areas that they have not trained for years can be a challenge. And do you want me to kind of go into some transferable skills? So one of the strategies we look at is how to transfer the wonderful skills they've developed as student athletes into the future, into their career, whatever that might involve. And so a lot of these skills, like their awesome work ethic, leadership, accepting criticism, time management, teamwork, all these skills are very applicable to the future. So we really emphasize all that they have. And one last thing I mentioned is, I mentioned some perhaps negative emotions, but a lot of student athletes feel a sense of excitement. I mean, I don't have to wake up at 5:30 a.m. That is amazing. I can't wait to try out that life and maybe get to pursue things like violin or some things that are hard to fit into my schedule.
Madeline, that's a perfect transition to you, because you made this transition pretty recently, and I'm curious if any of the things that Jennifer mentioned have been applicable to your experience?
Yeah, definitely. I think, is this on?
Yes.
Talking about the transferable skills and the criticism, I've actually received that comment from my current employer a couple times, saying that I take criticism really well, and that's something that I've never really thought about. You know, and coming out of swimming, there are so many transferable skills that you don't think are going to transfer. You don't even think about them as a skill, like multitasking. You know, in the pool, you're thinking about so many things about your stroke, about how far you are from the wall, you know, all the things your coach just said to you, while also remembering how to move your body, which a lot of it is muscle memory, but still now coming into the real world, per se, I love being really active and doing a lot of activities. And as Nicole said, you know, I'm involved with a lot of things, but just being able to manage all of it and keep all those balls up in the air is a true skill that I learned through swimming, and especially the Division III aspect of it. I could double major. I was in Greek life. I was a student athlete. I had a couple jobs on campus. You know, all of that allowed me to have these skills that I would use in the real world that I didn't know I was going to use. So that really resonated with me.
Derek, I'm curious, with the quantity and quality of student athletes that you work with in your own experience as a student athlete, what are some of the opportunities that you have to guide student athletes kind of through this transitionary process from your own experience and with the kind of skill development that both Jennifer and Madeline talked about?
I have a different perspective when it comes to really using the resources around you. Coming from a really small hometown of Greensburg, Kentucky, which no one's ever heard of, I didn't have extensive training from a standpoint of networking, and having a resume, and just being presentable, because we didn't have opportunities like that. But someone took me under their wing and said, "Hey, we're gonna go here." So I went, and someone else said, "You'd be great here," so I went. And that's what we try to do at SASSO. So we have 1,000 and usually 1,100 student athletes in the fall, and somewhere around 950, 960 in each spring. We have 29 full-time staff members that work really hard to have a personal connection with all of them at all times. So our goal is to not let anyone leave Ohio State broke or broken. That's the key. So we want them to be very self-sufficient when they leave, and self-starters and self-advocates. And we have several programs like the degree completion program that really targets those that are about 30 hours. They have 30 hours remaining in their degree program, or if they need a change of pace. We also help with a lot of things that wouldn't just be academic, like tutorial. We help with life skills. So those things that Chance Life Skills set out to do 15 to 20 years ago when it was created under the NCAA. It's kind of morphed. We've really worked on career, so career placement, career development. All those things work hand in hand for the success of the student. As a former student athlete, I struggled. I'll be really honest. I think I finally got over sport maybe last week. It was about 25 years ago that I got on a campus around August and played for Coach Howard Snellberger. And I knew I was going to play all 4 years and be a superstar linebacker for the Cowboys. And I don't even know why the Cowboys, because I don't like the Cowboys. But I had a really good time just learning the plays, learning the system, and then 2 injuries ended my career. And I think everybody can attest, you know the last day that you were playing. You know the last time you got to put on the uniform or the helmet. It's tough. So I searched for about 10 years to find something. Our goal in SASSO is to not allow that to happen to any of our students. So last night we had a scholar athlete banquet. We had 674 students that were honored with a 3.0 or better cumulative with several awards. So that's a great number of students that are doing extremely well. But at some point we need to know that they have a plan for each of their lives, and then also the other 400 students that did not achieve that major goal as well.
Well, that seems like a perfect transition to you, Malik, who I know when we were in class together last semester, it was a really difficult decision that you were making to end your career because of physical injury, and now that seems like there's a new opportunity has opened the door. Could you kind of walk us through what your thought process was when you, and coming from IMG, it seems like you've been geared toward this moment for a long time to be successful at football. So what's it like when you realize that maybe your body's not going to allow you to do that?
Well, that's something I learned at a young age, that football or sports in general is not going to last forever. You always have to have a backup plan. And I mean, my dad taught me that right when I started playing. And the first injury I had, I knew, like, I'm a young kid. People have this all the time, and I'm going to bounce back. And I mean, I did that the first time. The second time, it was kind of different. I mean, I'm in college, and you're right. I was working up to this moment my whole life to get on the field, play college football, and I finally earned playing time. When you get on the field, no one's thinking that, like, that's not going through your head, that I'm about to get an injury. So when it happens, you're just sitting there in a giant stadium, just looking around like, did this really just happen? I mean, so it hits you. For me and my mentality, it's just like, the first thing that came to mind, I'm just gonna bounce back from this. But that's not always the case. And when people tell you that your career is done, like the doctor from the team, I mean, that's what really hits you. And that's when you really start thinking about, what now? Like, you say you had a backup plan, but what is your backup plan? And that happened to me in the spring before I got to your class. So once the doctor told me that last spring, I mean, start talking to people like Derek, and they work with you to help you find that backup plan. And just building a support system. And me being far away from home in Tampa, Florida, it's hard to have a support system. You know, you talk with your parents on the phone, that's not the same all the time. And that's why people at SASSO work with you. People like Nicole will talk to you and keep you on path and help you build your own path. And it's kind of up to you to find your own way.
Jerry, I'm really curious about your perspective on this because it used to be, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when we just played sports in high school, like we weren't athletes. And lots of people played sports and there was no expectation that we would necessarily rise to Malik's level or not even, but rise to the Division III level that Madeline was on. You did it and it was something that you did to kind of be with your friends and have a good time. Now we've escalated this to such a level, we've elevated to such a level that sports now creates athletes at the very youngest of age. And that means that really abrupt end could come at any time and be really life altering. How do we kind of compare them from a high school perspective or a K-12 perspective?
Well, I would say this, that, in Malik's case in particular, I don't really know statistically, but I would guess in Malik's case in particular that it borders more on 98% of the individuals that went to IMG played at the next level. So their career did probably even higher than that. I work in an environment where 98% of our kids that participate in high school sports do not go to the next level. And that career for them, which we've magnified to be so critical and so high level, ends not by their choice. I even have my own unique perspective in that, I came through this system. I'm a product of our organization. I was a high school player, probably not good enough to go to the next level, but I coached. I was an athletic administrator. I was a teacher. And during my coaching years, I coached altogether 20-some years. And even there, I like to think I was a good coach. Our teams had great records. But I also encountered a group who had the toughest parents in the world. And I was fired. Sports ended for me. And I spent 12 years of depression, literally. So we now we are really caught with our athletic administrators in our schools to focus very much on that 98% of life in sports is not going to continue, and really focus on the mental health aspects of that. And I think we really are right at a crossroads of that to focus. We say that we have roughly between 300 and 350,000 kids in Ohio alone, the fourth largest of any state in the nation of kids involved in athletics in schools. We have to focus on that 350,000 kids, 98% of them that are not going on. And that's challenging our own athletic administrators who are guidance counselors, ticket sellers, schedulers. They're one-man, one-woman shows. And we're at a crossroads for that. And that's why this is such an important avenue for us to help. People will help. The word needs to spread.
Well, I have to ask you, Jennifer, and I mean, Jerry just opened the Pandora's box of parents. And we do, live vicariously. It's not always through the athletic accomplishment of our kids, but all of my friends were made in hockey. I know, Madeline's mother was a high-level swimmer. All of her kids swam. Both of her parents came out and watched her swim often. It was a large social and family component for both of us, I'm sure for all of us. How does that factor into kind of the pressure that gets put on that point when you do stop being an athlete?
Yes, there's a social psychology term called birging, B-I-R-G, basking in reflected glory. And sometimes parents
Anybody want to raise their hand?
get wrapped up in that. So one of the constructs I wanted to talk about today is athletic identity, and that's the degree to which an individual defines themselves by that athlete role. And we find that when the athletic identity is very high, the retirement can be more difficult. And so I think that starts long before student athletes reach college, in terms of with their children, parents need to kind of think about that, of trying to foster lots of different aspects of developing their identities of their children. And this is quite a challenge because there's so much pressure right now in sports to specialize at a young age, and we know that children who specialize in just one sport before the age of 15 are less likely to play that sport in college. But also all these travel teams. I was just hearing that there is a travel t-ball league, which is unbelievable. But really being mindful of, do I want my child to engage in these travel teams, because it does not create balance in their lives. And so being thoughtful of helping that identity develop, in a broad way.
Madeline, what do you think about that? I know, swimming was a huge part of your life from the time you could literally swim.
Yeah, so my siblings and I probably started swimming when we were 6. My mom and her 5 sisters all swam at some point. And so we grew up in a swimming family. My cousin swam in college, so myself and my twin sister swam in college. And it was absolutely an identity for us. And I still think of myself as a swimmer and an athlete, even though I haven't been in a pool in a year, but to me it's now more of a mentality than a identity crisis per se. And I think the Division III aspect helped with that, because I had other passions that I was pursuing in school that allowed me to fall back on them when I finished swimming. But the identity thing is really hard. How do you, if you've committed 20 years of your life, 15 years of your life to this thing, and all of a sudden you don't do it anymore, how do you identify yourself? And what qualities in yourself do you want to pursue, and what other activities? And that's something that I think is really helpful that Derek's working on that, and I didn't have that in school. I created that for myself, but there was nobody really helping us think through that process. And so I know a lot of people at the D3 level who did end their career and they weren't sure what to do with it. So a lot of people started coaching in high schools and middle schools, which I think is a fantastic way to continue that, or you find a master's team. But it's really hard to think through that next step of your life, and how do you want to begin that next chapter, and what mindset are you going to go at it with? And some people, it just abruptly ends, and others have thought about it. And going into my senior season, my body was starting to give way, so I knew I was preparing myself. But that doesn't make it any easier. You feel the whole roller coaster at the beginning of the season. You're like, oh yeah, I have, swimming to 4 months, 5 months, a really long season. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna swim my event, 20 times. That's so many. And then all of a sudden it's like, I only have 5 more chances to swim this event. Like, how am I gonna do that? And you start to wrestle with it. And I'm very thankful that I was able to begin the process at the end of my junior years. Just start to think about it and pursue my external passions. But it's definitely not an easy transition by any means.
Well, Malik, it seemed like you had done some of the similar work that Madeline's talking about last year when you were coming to grips with the fact that your football career was over. Can you kind of walk us through what happened that prompted this kind of reinvigoration of your football prospects, and how you shift mentally even in that regard?
All right, to go back a little bit, immediately after the second ACL team, I went back home to the doctor who I had surgery on, who operated me in high school. And it's a doctor I know, and my dad works with him, and he's just kind of motivated me, just telling me I wanted the truth, a second opinion. And from what he said, it was just like, you're a young dude. I mean, you're gonna heal up. Just give it some time. I mean, as a student athlete, a lot of people don't know what goes into what I mean by time off. A lot of people doesn't know what happens day in and day out. I mean, you wake up at 6 a.m., you have a lift, injured or not, surgery or not, you're still gonna be there 6 a.m. the whole day. Still gotta go to class, still gotta walk around, still gotta, and I mean, you're doing all that with the torn ACL. So for me, it was just like a step back from the game. And with this time off, I felt like my body's healing, and like the doctor said, he was right. I mean, it's just gonna take some time, and that's all I feel like I really needed. And right now, where my body and my mind is at, even though it took a while to come to grips with my injuries and it just hurt at that moment, but now I feel like I'm healing up very nice, and my mindset is a lot better, and a more positive outlook on things.
So Derek, how do we kind of balance all these things, especially at a D1 level? So I think it's, you know, the things that Madeline just talked about her ability to balance a multitude of pursuits at D3, we don't offer that luxury per se to our D1 athletes. So, you know, what is the kind of ramification for requiring such a level of specialization in athletics? I know students who said they wanted to be elementary school teachers and they can't pursue that here because of the student teaching requirement, or nursing, or other things that we limit to be a D1 athlete. So how do you balance that, knowing that their careers will come to an end at some point?
Well, I thought it'd be important to dispel one rumor that I think nationally just is the norm. When students that are on scholarship are injured, they have a special fund, and it's a medical fund. And students are allowed to continue their educational pursuits. And there's nothing wrong with someone really trying to still get into the process of healing themselves, but that pressure is actually alleviated because when they're a medical scholarship, medically exempted student, they can finish their degree. So if that is happening anywhere in the nation, that should not be happening. It's a problem. And then CAA guards against that. So for what we try to do, the identity is so much wrapped into what makes you great, what makes Malik great. But we partner very heavily with Jen Carter's area to make sure that we have a whole cocoon or a family there for everybody that's ready to talk to us. It all starts with the relationship. It's really important that someone that you trust is there for you when you're ready to talk. You're not always ready to talk right away. But we have to find a way to if that shift or that focus is so much into sport, it needed to be on two things. So that's why we call it a student athlete. But we tried to shift that identity into something else that they love. So for me, I tried to find something that gave me the rush of what it was like to run out of that tunnel. And it was hard. I tried entertainment. I tried student activities. I tried student government. My claim to fame till this day is that we booked Dave Chappelle at the and he pulled out for the movie Half Baked. But he sent us 2 great comics and we packed the house. We also brought Dave Matthews. So that was a rush, but it was nothing like hitting somebody in front of your 20,000 closest friends, and for Malik, 100,000. 4 million on TV. So it's something that you have to keep in mind as you approach the students. It starts with the relationship. It ends with channeling it to something they love that could possibly hold a candle or match to what you used to do. But there's nothing like the sport and the rush and what you grew up at the age of 3 probably playing. I played at age 4 in the back of a field and never stopped until I was 22. So it was hard for me to give that up for a while, but we tried to talk through it, and Jen Carter's group and all the resources that we offer in SASSO and the counselors are there to help students, and that helps them through a bit.
Going back to where you was talking about travel teams and when you're young and how this sport really, what it means to an athlete. For people who weren't an athlete, there's nothing wrong with that, but I mean, you just had some of your best memories as a kid playing sports and traveling with your friends. Like, I still talk with my friends back home about memories we had being teams traveling around Florida. But I didn't start playing when I was 3. I mean, I started playing when I was about 8 or 9, and that was the first time I played football. And I mean, I fell in love with it from there. And ever since then, I just had a passion because, and I wasn't always the best player from when I first started. I mean, my mom told me to quit from day one. She texted my dad the very first practice and told him, like, Malcolm, we're not doing this. I mean, I was tripping over bags and all that type of stuff, but I was still having fun. I mean, then I grew into the player I am today, and that's what kind of helped. It's a part of me. I mean, it's just a sport. It's just it's not. It's a part of me, and it helped me grow as a man and build relationships with people I probably would have never met, seen places I probably would have never ever been, and those are my memories I have in my life, and I want to continue to build those memories and build myself as a person in school and on the field.
So Jerry, this totally leads us to the kind of logical question about travel sports, and as the mother of a high school hockey player, it's really disheartening when I see the level of investment and engagement and and specialization that comes with travel sports. By the same token, as the mother of a high school athlete, I saw the emphasis that was placed on athletics, and everywhere I went as a parent, people would say to me, "Oh, does your son play sports?" That's the first question people ask me after they say, "What high school does he go to?" So we have such an emphasis on this identity as being an athlete. It's such a level of importance that we've placed as a society. Everyone's asked me, "Is he going to play in college?" Like, I'm curious why that's the question everyone asks me, and what, from your perspective of all your years in high school sports, is this something we need to be confronting, and if so, how?
Well, for so long, I think high schools in general, our organization in general, tried to almost fight that. I have a grandson being born next Tuesday, and I'm pretty sure that he will be asked to be on a travel soccer team on Wednesday. Let's hope he gets on the right one. But then again, tomorrow or Saturday, drive anywhere. I don't need to single this one out, but look at a Dick's Sporting Goods parking lot. Youth sports are a $3.2 billion a year industry. So we spent time trying to challenge that it was taking away from what we do, meaning what we promote. It's not going to go away. So we have to find a way to partner that, but the pressure on that is incredible. But I think, again, I feel like we're turning the corner to a degree in the point that something we have stressed in high school sports for a long time, maybe not enough, is that we are educational athletics. That all these life lessons are going to be learned in high school sports. And I know we've said it for a long time, but now I think it's really forcing schools, athletic coordinators, directors to, put their money where their mouth is. I mean, really stresses that to them. And I think sometimes they have challenges to do that because there's so much pressure on the local hometown paper. ESPN 400 will cover the, county championship game, whatever it might be. So one of the things we talked about, I was talking out in the hallway, and we talked about in high school, at a lot of levels, sports have participation, coaching, have almost become an addiction. They're an addiction for us. And we're now looking at that mental health aspect of that being a mental health aspect that we must deal with in the schools. So I think there is more coming that way. The challenge of youth sports almost is pulling us away from that educational-based athletics. But again, sometimes you have to identify the problem first and then we can tackle it. I think our schools are starting to do that.
Does anyone have questions?
Just to piggyback on what you were talking about just now in terms of trying to have balance. What happens when you have year-round sports? No matter what sport you're in it year-round. And so how do you combat a coach? I used to have coaches who would tell my children, "You're not going to start if you take off a summer vacation. You're not going to be in our Legends program, our Champions program." And I would take my kids out and they would go and they'd still start because the reality of it is it's ridiculous to not have that balance with your family. But from your level, what do you do to influence that? And it's hard when sports is 24/7. Where do you have time for violin or theater or other things that your kid wouldn't be so objectified if they could do other things and still play their sport?
The timing of your question couldn't be better. I mentioned that when I came in here today, I might have a little hard time sitting down because my rear end is quite sore from being chewed out quite a bit over the last 24 hours. We had presidents of every one of our coaches associations. We represent 26 high school different sports. All 26 presidents of their association represented all the coaches that coach that sport. were in our office yesterday for a meeting, and 26 out of those 26 want more. Oh, wait, you're only allowed 10 coaching days in the summer? We want 20. Ours is unique. How we combat that is a daily challenge that I have of having to say no. Having to say no, because when I say no, they're not going to get that scholarship to Louisville. They're not going to get the full ride to Ohio State. And that's, for me personally, it's a personal thing. It's probably the number one challenge that I have in my professional career, a job, is to say no. Because no means I'm attacking, I'm not offering anything, I'm inhibiting a kid's opportunities down the road. So it is a huge challenge. The timing of your question couldn't be better, but we have to continue to hold that line. And we have to continue to educate our coaches that more doesn't necessarily mean that it's successful down the road. And I'll end it with this, that we talked about the number of scholarship players and things like that, or multi-sport athletes. Everything is coming out about multiple multi-sport athletes having more success, or single sport specialization hurts. And everybody not everybody, a lot of our coaches, yeah, we know that, but my sport's different, I'm different. And that's a big challenge, but that's something also I look forward to, that challenge too.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Have other questions?
I just want to say that I think in what you have said and what I have saw with my sons travel and now at college, that as they get older and they want to specialize, then they choose what they want to do. I had him try every sport, and then he chose, and then he had to learn to make that decision. Is he going to do this, or is he going to go to that camp? It helps with life lessons, and it helps them learn to interact with many people, and also they experience some bad people, but they learn the positiveness. And I always said from day one, there's plan Z, because you can't get hurt in a wheel before you get to the next level. But they learn that, I think it helps athletes also when they get into life. There's things that come up in life, you have to make decisions, and they can be hard, and there's choices. So they start learning that a lot younger, which I think gives them a greater balance that I've seen in my son and in other families that I know, and keep in contact with them all over. I can go to any state and call someone up. I may not have seen for 10 or 15 years, but you have that bond.
Two things. To Jerry's point, there's research that says that coaches are not recruiting out of the high school system. So I can send you that if you'd like to send it to your.
You're saying they're recruiting out of travel
They're
systems.
going out of travel systems, or the summer sport camps, or the academies that are specialized. They're not going to, I grew up in Kettering, Ohio, so the Fairmont versus Centerville soccer game. They may go to follow up, but that's not where they live. Now it's Kettering. But, my question really is for Malik, what's next for you? Like, what was that plan B, and then what do you envision for your future now? And if you still don't know, that's fine, because that's up to your 21.
I'm turning 21 next month.
Okay, well, happy early birthday. What do you think is like potentially the future?
You never know what the future's gonna be, but you can plan, yes. And I mean, I have a vision for myself. I mean, my dream has always been to go to the next level. It's always to level up to the next level. And like I said, I learned that maybe that might not happen, maybe it might, but I'm gonna work my hardest to make sure I get there. And even if it doesn't happen, I do have a backup plan now to make sure that I can graduate from Ohio State, one. Second, go on to my master's degree. My master's. Yes. So after I get my master's, athletics, like sports medicine in general, is probably something that's always been a passion. I also do have a passion for sports medicine. Just from my dad, watching him, and he worked for many sports medicine companies, selling various products, and I think that's something I can relate to, just dealing with injuries from a very young age, and learning about how the surgeries go on, because these doctors, I mean, you build a connection with them, and they have shown me the operations and taught me a lot of things, and my dad's been teaching me this type of stuff since I was a little kid, just showing me all types of products that doctors use, and you get to see all that stuff, and I mean, that's something that interests me. Coming to Ohio State, Like before you learn what it's really like to be a D1 student athlete, I'm not gonna lie, I wanted to go into medicine so bad. Like that was something that really interests me, is helping others and get healthy. I mean, but once you become a D1 athlete, you really can't do things like that because your time is consumed. So if I could go back into sports medicine, I think I would. Yes.
One thing I did want to mention on the heels of that, and we haven't yet talked about the really practical implications of stopping the level of physical activity that student athletes or athletes in general go through. So, you know, one of my students was just featured in the Lantern, former student, and he mentioned he eats 8,000 calories a day. I don't know what you don't have to tell us where your clerk can take this, but you know, the level of physical activity, and we're all striving to be physically active, but you're mandated and you have this incredible fitness level, and then suddenly one day it ends. So I'm curious, Jen, what advice do you give on that one?
Yes, I mean, that's one reason injuries can be so devastating, is because exercise does so many wonderful things for us, not only physically, but for our mental health. And we do have a Buckeye for Life guide that we give out to all graduating senior student athletes. And I had a section in there about how does one exercise for physical and mental health. You know, we're not necessarily training. And to find that balance, and it follows American College of Sports Medicine guidelines in terms of the duration of exercise during the week and the intensity and that kind of thing. But one thing I've noticed is that because exercise is so great for the brain, sometimes individuals who have mental health disorders like ADHD or anxiety disorders, I sort of have a very worried mind, kind of generalized anxiety disorder, that when they stop the 3 or 4 hours of exercise a day, sometimes those symptoms crop up because that they're not kind of treating that in their brain with all that exercise. So it is a really important topic to figure that out. How do I exercise as a NARP, a non-athlete regular person in the future?
Madeline, what did you do?
Well, definitely the eating was a challenge. And I mean, I had never had to work out on my own, ever. You know, outside of, even in the summers, we had training programs where our coaches would send us home with packets of workouts. So you train with your club team at home. So moving into the real world as a NARP, love that word, it was a challenge because first off, I was living in a big city in Chicago on a salary that I couldn't afford a nice gym. So that to me was the first challenge. You know, everybody does all the workout classes and has someone else tell you how to work out. But that I couldn't afford to do that, so I had to figure out how to do it on my own, and that was a real challenge. I found myself looking up workouts, which seems so silly. I've been working out on my own or with a team for 15 years. I should know what to do in the gym. But then you get there and you're like, oh my gosh, I know so many things, I can't even think of what to do. So that was a real struggle, and getting myself up in the morning, because you stay late at work or everyone wants to do a happy hour. When do you find that time to work out? Because all of a sudden you graduate and you start working a 9 to 5, and you say, come 5 o'clock, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to get home, I have to cook dinner, it's time to go to bed. You know, you become tired all the time.
Become a normal person like the
Yes.
rest of us.
I don't know how we did it in college, having a 5:30 a.m. workout, going to 4 classes, having whatever group project meetings, and then doing another 2.5 hour workout at night, and then going to the library and doing your homework. Like, now I have a hard time going to the gym once during the day in a 9 to 5. I don't know how we did it in college, but.
Come back to Jerry. It seems you used the word fired in your description. And I realize it's a real personal thing, but you hear that a lot now about people trying to come back from that. That's maybe as bad as an injury. Could you address that, maybe not too personally, but at some level? Did you feel that honestly occurred? And then how could you recover from that in a way that brought you where you are now?
Thank you. And when I say that, it might be personal, but I'm proud of the fact that I did, because I will tell you, we're a product of life's experiences, and you also teach kids. I was fortunate enough to be in a leadership position that you teach kids to move on. I like to say that during my coaching career, I was a really good coach when the Steelers quarterback was my point guard as a basketball coach. And if you know his size, I was a pretty good coach then. And I got fired at the end of his junior year, and he and a bunch of others said to me they're not going to play the next year. They were very loyal to me. They were very good. They were all coming back. And no, you will play. You will play. But so when I say, I mean, anybody that coaches, it's 24/7. You live it. You have to today. It's just the way it is. So when it was taken away from me, it wasn't my choice to do it. I truly suffered depression. I went to, doctors. I was medicated. I hit it pretty well because I was still in a leadership role as an athletic director. Hit it very well, I think. My family doesn't always think that, but again, it was 12 years. And I just had to find another niche and run with it that was, projects that I wanted to do for our school and our athletes to give back from the experiences I had. So it was a challenge. And I think that's one of the things that when I talk about what our schools do today and the life skills that they're trying to teach kids, because 98% of them are not going to play beyond that, they're really focusing today on leadership skills. Trying to teach different leadership skills to all of those students, because those being such an important part of going on to be successful in whatever they do. Own your own business as a plumber. Go into those things. You're not all going to go to college. And I'm really proud of our schools, and I'm hoping over time that I can really help provide, set the table for some of our schools to be able to provide more of those opportunities. Thank you.
Other questions?
Whoever wants to kind of touch on it from my personal experience or something, but how do you address maybe repercussions that multi-sport athletes face when they don't necessarily want to specialize in one sport? So, I'm kind of an ADD child and I play a lot of sports, but because I didn't specialize, there wasn't, the playing time wasn't well distributed. So, going through that, you're able to hit the next level. So I guess how do you address kids that are starting to explore that plan B prior to finishing their sports?
Derek, you want to grab that one?
Yeah, I have a 5 and 7-year-old, and my wife expects them to be pro athletes by next year. And I'm the one that's saying, hey coach, I've talked to soccer coaches, swimming, gymnastics, and they've all said, hey, just wait. It's going to be fine if you wait until age 11 or 12. Don't get too wrapped up into the travel piece. And it sounds like I'm going to need a support group for travel, baseball, or whatever I'm going to have to get into with my kids. But what I tried to do is, I was a 3-sport student in high school. 2 of those were all state and 1 was all region. I truly felt like what Coach said, that there is some power in having 3 different or 2 different types of sporting events. But what I say is, what you absolutely love, you go towards that closer to the end. So for me, I had offers from basketball and baseball, and I said no to every coach that asked me if I would do that. Probably not a great idea with 3 knee surgeries. But I had 2 different sports or avenues that I wanted to go into, but I loved football. So I said, I'm going to play football. Junior year on, no one ever contacted me again about those sports because they knew I was going to play that. So I was just focused on that area. And for new parents or parents that have rising students that are coming up, I want them to know that they should be having fun, if that's possible. I know you preach that, but if it's not fun, you'll get hurt. You're doing it for the wrong reasons. You're going to end up not doing the thing that you love, so why do it? So I know I love hearing Malik talk, and I want to see it work out for him, but I know he's going to have a great plan when he's done, when he decides it's done. So if parents can really help the students know, or their children know, that they have an out, that there is something that they can do, and if they do fail, it's okay. I bet the level of play of all of those students and children would rise, and you would never know their potential until you do that. Just release that piece of pressure that's there, that's underneath, and they won't need Jen Carter's area so much with that stress of knowing that if I don't do this, I don't get a scholarship. If I don't do this, my parents won't be as proud of me. So my kids will know that from me. I will not be pressuring, but they they're gonna do anything, they have to do it well. So that's how I approach it.
To speak on that a little bit, and what you said about going back on parents and their involvement with their child getting in sport. The way I look at it, from my father's involvement with my my sport, he was the coach actually on my little league team, and he coached me and all my friends. So, but it wasn't like he's gonna put me in the game just because he's the coach and I'm his son. I had to earn everything, and my teammates even knew that. Like, it wasn't easy. So for a parent, I think you should always take that step back away from your child's sport. Like, honestly, I wouldn't go to practice with my son. I would just drop him off and let him go. Because I don't want to be in the coach's ear telling him my son should be on the field. Or sometimes the kids don't even want to be out there if you're doing all that. I mean, that's just the way it is. And I know some of my friends, when sports stopped for them, it was their decision. And they had an argument and a family split because of that. So some people take it too serious. I mean, it's a sport, and you're supposed to be doing this for fun. This isn't a punishment. Some people put their kids in it for a punishment. I mean, I never heard of anything like that. So me, and every sport I played, it was always because I wanted to. My dad would always ask me, like, am I doing too much? Do you want to still continue to play after every injury? I mean, yes, I do. It was all my decision. Nobody's going to force me to do this. I mean, I thank them for that because I never had to feel that way. And with my children, hopefully in the future, hopefully I'm blessed with children that be blessed to play sports and are athletic, and I would never force them to play a sport.
So that's really great, Malik, and it really opened up, and I'm hoping maybe you can just give us some brief insights on this, Jen. You know, we have a lot of kids that get cut. That we've talked about people who choose not to, or they can't go on to the next level for a variety of reasons. But you know, we know that there's a huge drop off of kids who stop playing sports at the age of 11 when they get into a competitive junior high situation, or get into high school and they stop playing. Psychologically, physiologically, how do we help them cope?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that the aspect of choice in leaving sport makes a big difference in how we cope with it. And when we get cut from a team, obviously we do not have that choice. I think a lot of people go through kind of a grief experience when something like that happens. Either they have to retire from injury or they get cut. And again, it comes back to what sort of aspects of their identity have been developed before that. What support system do they have? How much balance do they have in their lives? We know, Jerry talking about like the 98% of kids who don't go on to college sports from high school, and something like 1% of high school student athletes will earn a college scholarship, which is sobering. And then from college sport, student athletes, 1% go on to play professionally. So we're really talking about the majority here. And to the extent that we have prepared ourselves for that transition and developed lots of different parts of ourselves, I think we can do better with that. I know speaking of like parent pressure, I know my dad was really into my swimming, and he would furiously write splits on the heat sheet at swim meets, and we kind of joked, we called him Stat Boy, because he would have the like trunk full of heat sheets with, he would know all my teammates' times from 5 years ago. But my mother would balance that out, and I would, in high school and with these 2 practices a day, I would be so irritable, and all the teenage hormones in addition to my extreme fatigue. And she would say, Jennifer, why don't you just quit? and it was great, because then I would say, I don't want to quit, you know, and to make sure that I would do it for myself. And I think having those parent messages of, this is not that big of a deal. This is a sport. It's an extracurricular activity. You know, you will be fine without it. Is helpful.
Well, on that note, can I have a round of applause for our panelists, please? We would like to invite you now to join us for lunch. So if you would walk out this door and to the right, there's elevators on the right-hand side past the restrooms, or there's stairs directly in front of you. And if you could go directly above where we are right now, you're going to hit the Senate chamber. There's signage up there for you. There's lunch waiting for you, and we have another stellar panel to talk about their experiences as parents and see how it works for them. Thank you so much for being here.